What is up, guys? I'm your friendly neighborhood web war fanatic, and I am super duper excited. I just saw that Villain Theory just dropped a Spider-Man Peter Parker video, and as you guys know, Spider-Man Peter Parker is my favorite hero in the entire game. I haven't seen anyone do a video like just on Peter Parker in a while, so I'm so excited that Villain Theory is doing this. I love watching Villain Theory stuff. He has super duper awesome content, and I would definitely recommend that you guys check him out if you aren't already. But yeah, I am so excited to see this video, and I do want to give you guys whatever my thoughts are. I have not seen the video, so I'm going to be reacting to it live. What kind of live? Because I don't know how to do live. But yeah, we're just gonna see what Villain Theory has to say about Peter Parker, and yeah, and I'll just give my 2 cents as well. And I don't think that I'm like absolutely right or anything like that. We may have a different perspective, or we may have the same perspective. But yeah, I respect Villain Theory's opinion, and I'll probably agree with him, but I'm just gonna give you guys my opinion here too. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started.
See here we have a brand new series all about my favorite decks. So we're going character to character each episode, starting off with Spider-Man, the original character from the core box, the character most people played first, not me, my friend introduced me to Black Panther, and he's really interesting. He is flawed, but his imperfections lead to really interesting challenges in deck building and gameplay that are fun to kind of work around. That actually leaves me really liking Peter Parker, Spider-Man, So these decks I'm going to be talking about aren't the strongest decks I can make. I'm not just saying these are the most powerful decks, because these are the decks I find the most fun. My favorite decks are the decks I enjoy the most. That is why I play the game at the end of the day. And yes, I do think that's pretty strong decks overall, but they are not. I could really push that power level up. I could go for some pretty nasty strategies, and it would be stronger, but it would leave less room for creativity. We could have more allies, we could have more recursion, things like that. That's typically very.
Okay, cool. So I mean, he's talking about the decks that he's making for Peter Parker, and yeah, I mean, I totally agree. Like, the thing with Marvel Champions is that if you're trying to build a very powerful deck, oftentimes they're not going to be as fun, or they're going to be maybe not as fun, but less creative, I guess. Like, there's less room for doing like fun type of unique gimmicks if you're trying to build the strongest deck as possible. I always try to do both, right? I want like a really strong deck, but I want that deck to be fun as well. So it's kind of like finding that balance, and definitely I find myself, having trouble trying to get something that's unique and fun while also at the same time powerful. So I think that, I mean, I completely agree that you have to kind of pick one or the other. I usually lean more towards like the strong side and then try to make it fun if possible. But I mean, I totally respect that he wants the deck to be more fun. Yeah, and for recursion too. Yeah, shout outs to Journeyman. Yeah, he really, I didn't even know about like recursion with regroup. It's so powerful, super strong with Peter Parker specifically because of his economy, how he has Moon Girl and Nick Fury and Black Cat. So I think that's a super strong deck. I'm not sure if Villain Theory says that he's going to do it or not, but I know he mentioned something about that just now. So yeah, I do want to say that is a super powerful deck, and I think that's a really fun deck too. Yeah, I think that's. And then he said something else about, oh, his first hero. I've heard before in his other videos, the first hero that he played from, of course, is actually Black Panther. But it is cool that he likes Peter Parker Spider-Man a lot. Yeah, Peter Parker. It's not one of his top 15 favorites. I remember I commented on that one because I remember he put the Peter Parker Spider-Man in the thumbnail, and I thought it was going to be one of his favorites. I was super duper excited, and then he said he just had to put like the thumbnail, so that was really funny. But yeah, let's go ahead and keep watching.
Very strong, but not today. This is not the purpose of this video or these decks. Though again, you can take them in expert mode against almost every villain. Maybe dodge the top 3 or 4 hardest, but even then, you can take these against the vast majority of expert villains and expect to succeed with the proper play pretty much every time. At least that's my opinion. So,
okay, so these are strong decks, but they're not like the strongest possible decks that he can make. I'm not really going to be like, saying if it's like strong or not, right? Like, I'm sure that they do very, very well against expert villains. Like, I think he knows what he's talking about. I'm just gonna be, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think that I would disagree too much with any of that.
We'll have a lightning quick look through his strengths and weaknesses. We'll talk very quickly about the web warriors and how they work, because a couple of these decks are going to be using them, and then we'll get into it. So, damage, actually pretty good on the villain.
I actually think I need to slow down the speed a little bit. It's a little bit hard for me to follow. Okay, I'm gonna do 1.5.
Not very good at mid-range. He can get overrun by minions very easily, especially because although he has a 2 attack stat, he does like to defend with his 3 defense. Threat removal.
His damage, I actually want to watch back a little bit because I saw that he put a damage of 2.
Get overrun by minions very easily, and we'll get into it. So, damage, actually pretty good on the villain. Not very good at mid-range. He can get overrun by minions very easily, especially because although he has a 2 attack stat, he does like to defend with his 3 defense. Threat removal, still some of the worst in the game, and we now have 50 characters. He's
Okay, I mean, yeah, I totally, okay, let's just hear what it says about the threat removal too, and I'll comment on the damage and the threat removal.
Like bottom three easily. Some would say bottom one, honestly.
One,
It's
okay.
pretty rough. So that's the main thing we're going to be looking to fix in any of our kind of solo approaching decks. Now, his reliability is a little bit.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's, I mean, possibly. I mean, Peter Parker in his, just in his innate kit, I don't think that he has the best threat removal. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It could possibly be a bottom three. I mean, it's definitely not a top three. Yeah, I don't have too much to say on that. It's definitely one of the weak points of Peter Parker. Yeah, but I mean, if you guys have probably talked to me before, I do think that allies can help balance a lot of that out. Yeah, and playing Just is going to help a lot with that as well. For the damage, I actually disagree with the 2 stars for damage. I'm assuming that, with the 5-star max, that 5 stars is like amongst the best of heroes, and then 2 stars is like a little bit on the other side of the spectrum. And then Villain Theory's point is that he has trouble with mid-sized minions, and I actually disagree with that. And I actually just posted a playthrough with Peter Parker against Mr. Sinister yesterday, and I was talking to Andy. Shout outs to Andy, where we were just talking about the minion thing and how Peter Parker has no problem with mid-sized minions because he can play a swinging web kick and just knock out like a 4 hit point minion, right? I think I had a 4 hit point minion, like one of the nasty boys, and I just easily knocked it out with the swing web kick. No problem, even though there's excess damage, right? Like 4 excess damage because the swing web kick is 8 and the minion's only 4. Peter Parker's economy is so crazy that he has no problem extra paying for these like expensive attack events because I mean he's getting an extra card draw here with Scientist in his Alter Ego side, and then he gets to draw another card with Spider Sense in his hero side. So I think that that's a kind of a common misconception with Peter Parker. I've never had trouble dealing with particularly mid-sized minions just because he can easily play those swinging web kicks. Yeah, I mean, but I can definitely see that if there's a bunch of like minion swarm, I can see how that could hurt. And definitely if you are having a lot of minions, like Peter Parker, I there's some games I'll play with him where I will defend a lot, and there's some games where I won't defend that much. It'll kind of depend on the minions, right? If you need his basic activation where he needs to attack, then just don't defend, right? You know that this villain has a lot of minions coming out, and then if you know there's not any minions, then it's fine exhausting to defend. But I think that Peter Parker has no problem just taking hits from the minion because of his backflips, and then he doesn't need to exhaust, and then he can also just use AMA to heal up. So if you guys see my games, like I think I have a game against Zola where like I'm constantly like just getting like beat up by minions, dropping to like 3 hit points, 2 hit points, 1 hit point. But then I'm playing that out so I can just flip over, recover with AMA, and get that full recovery, going right back, and I don't need to exhaust to defend. So I think Zola is a good example too of like he's probably the epitome of mid-sized minions, a type of scenario that has a lot of that. And if you guys check out my Peter Parker against Zola, like I had completely no problem. It was a super duper fun game because I'm flipping every single turn, using AMA to heal up. So yeah, I think that's actually a little bit of a common misconception, and I think that yeah, Peter Parker actually has great damage amongst the heroes that I've played, probably around like half the heroes in the game. I do think that Peter Parker has just about average, slightly above average, right? Like comparing to someone like Doctor Strange, and this is a conversation that we've been having too, like on Des Cry's channel as well. But just basically, Doctor Strange is one of the strongest heroes in the game. I'm not arguing that Peter Parker is stronger than Doctor Strange or whatever, but in terms of pure damage, I would like totally ask you guys to check out my Doctor Strange versus Venom Goblin and Peter Parker Spider-Man versus Venom Goblin. And Peter Parker has a way easier time lining up that burst damage of 21 damage to knock out Venom Goblin Stage 3, so much easier than Doctor Strange. So even though Doctor Strange may be a better hero, I think that Peter Parker's damage is definitely one of the higher ones. And I'm kind of known for, I guess, playing a lot of Venom Goblin. He's my favorite villain, so I probably have the most playthroughs against him than actually any other villain. But Peter Parker, I find that it's so much easier for him to line up that damage against a Venom Goblin, that big burst damage, because of those 3 swing web kicks. There's massive, like 8 damage, 3 costs. So I do feel like that Peter Parker's damage, I mean, it's not like amazing, right? It's not like 5 stars, but I do think it is a little bit underrated. I think that it is above average, especially amongst the heroes that I played. But yeah, I mean, that's my only thing on the damage. I totally agree with the threat removal here. Let's continue.
Low I put here, that might confuse people, but in solo play especially, again, he's got cards like Enhanced Spider Sense, which is really good if you get a Treachery card, but if you don't draw a Treachery card, you can't use it. Similar with Spider Traces, no minion, can't use it. What if your Alter Ego or the villain is stunned, backflip, can't use it. Lots of cards that if you draw at the wrong time or the wrong situation, they're just not great. And if you happen to get 3 or 4 of them and maybe a resource card in your hand, you can just be stuck, which is quite a massive pain. But fortunately, Spider-Man is rich. He's...
Okay, I'm sure he's going to go into it, right, because he's saying that Spider-Man's rich. For the reliability, man, like, okay, I totally agree with that, right? Having so many events in your deck makes you a little bit less of a reliable hero, for sure. And I would agree with the enhanced Spider Sense. You might not have it at the right time. Same with backflips. You might not have it at the right time. I would argue that Peter Parker is actually one of the more reliable heroes because he doesn't have essential events in his kit, right? So if I'm just gonna compare it to like, let's say like Spider-Woman, right? She has like her hero kit is flooded with events and very specific events, right? She has her Thor event. She has her that's the one where you can remove. It's one cost you can remove 3 threat among schemes. She has the pheromones, which is the stun and confuse. She has the one that gives her a tough status card, the contaminant one, the protection one. So like for Spider-Woman, I would consider a hero like that. And I think a lot more heroes lean over on that event side than Spider-Man Peter Parker. I feel like Peter Parker, his events, they're kind of just, I don't, maybe, I think I'm definitely biased by the way that I play him, but I play him more to be a build-out hero. So when I'm getting those event cards, I'm just using them as resources to put out, I don't know, like Avengers Mansion, which he has the economy for, a Quinn care, just building out your board. And when you have that, I mean, his damage is super duper consistent. You guys have seen me, use 3 swing web kicks in 1 turn against multiple villains. I think Ronin, Venom Goblin. I mean, it happens actually quite often, more often than you would think, because after you thin your deck, you're easily getting those the events that you want in your hand. And his massive economy, he's having like at least 6 cards in his hand. You can get other draw power with the Web of Life and Destiny, with Nick Fury, with Moon Girl. So I mean, I would actually disagree a little bit with the reliability. I understand his point, and I do agree that events make you, like, having a bunch of like key events do make you a little bit less reliable. But I don't think that, I don't know, like with Peter Parker, the hand spark sense is 1 cost, the backflip is 0 cost. Like getting those in your hand during the villain phase allows you to play them right away because they're so cheap compared to like a much more like expensive event, like a 2 cost event or a 3 cost event. I don't think there are that many 3 cost events that are like interrupts during the villain phase. But and when you get a backflip, you can almost always use it. Like it's never going to be not useful. And the hand Spire Sense is most of the time going to be useful as long as you have a treachery, or as long as the villain gives you a treachery card. So I do think that he's a little bit more reliable than a 2-star, but I think that that's a fair opinion as well.
Alter Ego ability on Peter Parker generates a resource. We like resources. His hero ability, Spider Sense, so whenever he gets attacked, draw a card. So he's got a lot more card draw than usual. He's got good resource generation. So we can use this economy, the way he pays and gets cards, to fix his other problems by paying for aspect cards, which solve them.
I think that is on point. Like that's exactly what I like to do with Peter Parker, right? His economy kind of helps him outweigh everything. It's just taking advantage of that. I think VillainTheory hit that right in the head. Yeah, that is like, yeah, like being a rich hero kind of help compensates a lot of other problems. I'd rather be like a hero with a high economy, like he has 5 stars for Peter Parker, which I totally agree with, and like low thought removal, than like being super good at removing threat, but then you have no economy, so it's still hard to pay for that removal stuff. But yeah, I think that what he said, like that's exactly what I like to do as well, just using that economy to offset everything else.
And that is going to be one of our major strategies here in general. And then he's just good at surviving. He's got that free defense, backflip, one of the best defense cards in the game. Aunt May, one of the best hitting support cards in the game. Webbed up. The problem.
Okay, totally agree. I don't know if you guys have seen my videos. I always talk about backflip and Aunt May. These 2 cards are like still to this day 2 of the best like defensive cards in the game. Yeah, in a core set hero, one of the original heroes. Like I think those cards are so good. But yeah, so I totally agree with that.
Webbed up, it stops 2 attacks again in solo play. That means you're getting 2 less cards because the villain's not attacking you twice. You have your hero abilities offline for 2 turns, pretty much, which is, it just makes webbed up too expensive to play, in my opinion, outside of, kind of like emergencies, or like you've got absolutely nothing else to do with your entire hand, which, again, that's sort of the reliability problem.
Yeah, I completely agree with webbed up. I think that most of the time, it's not going to be that good of a card to play. And just like he says, there are emergencies. So I'm glad that he did say that. There are many times where the webbed up came in super duper clutch, and it feels awesome because it feels like a very thematic card for Spider-Man. And yeah, the web would just like totally save the day because I have nothing else to play in my hand. So yeah, definitely, I completely agree that that's like my exact same experience with webbed up.
In a nutshell. So, Web Warriors. He doesn't have Web Warrior printed on him, even though he is Spider-Man, the kind of, the Web Warrior in my opinion. But I kind of have come to terms with this. The thing is, Web Warriors are really strong, guys, like ridiculously strong. Like having to play like War of the Great Web or Web of Light.
Totally agree. I think I've heard like that Mystics are the strongest trait in the game. I mean, Mystics might have the strongest heroes, but in my opinion, like to have any trait in the game, and this might be a hot take, it might not be, I'm not sure. I think that Web Warriors, obviously I'm biased, Web Warrior is the strongest trait in the game, like because of the cards that come with it, right? They have the strongest traded cards. The Web of Life and Destiny is probably the best like trait support because it's not even trait locked for one thing, and then not being able to not exhaust in order to draw a card is insane. Every other like trait lock card has to be exhausted, right? If you think about like Nowhere for Guardians, you have to exhaust it when you play Guardian Ally to draw a card. The Web of Life and Destiny like doesn't have to be exhausted. I think that just that alone makes it one of these strong supports. And then you have like Ghost Spider, which you guys have seen my tier list for basic allies. I think Ghost Spider is an S tier ally when you're playing Web War. She's like on the level of Nick Fury, on the level of Marie Hill, because being able to tutor an identity specific event is so catered. Like that's just an amazing effect. So yeah, I actually think the Web Warriors is the strongest trait. Obviously, Web War fanatic. So take what I say with a grain of salt.
Life Destiny first before I can play allies like Ghost Spider that need you to have a Web Warrior card in play before you can play them. It makes them feel earned. It makes that power level feel like, you really had to fight for it. And I like that. So actually, I think it's kind of fun as long as you don't kind of think about what could have been and you kind of accept what is. And that brings me on to my first deck. Welcome.
Okay, so I do want to make a comment on that. Let me go back real quick. Okay, so this is actually an opinion that I had for a really long time. I've never really heard anyone say this specific thing. So I do want to comment. I do completely agree. Like it does make it feel earned when you're playing the War of the Great Web in order to get all that Web War stuff out, and I think that makes it a lot more fun playing Peter Parker with Web Wars compared to other heroes. It's just super fun because you have to get out the War of the Great Web. It's not just you can't just like play the card straight up. So you do have some dead cards in your hand. Like Ghost Spider is a dead card in your hand if you get it early game, and you don't have the War of the Great Web or the Web of Life and Destiny. But I actually have my opinion on Peter Parker and the Web War trait is I actually think that Peter Parker is, if he had the Web War trait, he would be insanely bonkers. Like, I think he's already one of like the top 10 strongest heroes in the game, like one of the best heroes. And this is him without the Web Warrior trait. So a lot of people I know that they house rule him to have the Web Warrior trait, or they say that they really wish he had it. Don't get me wrong, I wish he had it too, but I think that the developers actually did an amazing job by balancing it this way because they knew what Peter Parker's kit is, and it's high economy, high draw power. And the Web of Life and Destiny and the Web Warriors have so much draw power as well. When you combine Peter Parker with the Web of Life and Destiny, he just becomes insane. So I think that to balance that out, he should not have the Web Warrior trait to start out the game. Because if he starts off with the Web Warrior trait, there's no, like, he just ramps up right away into that insane economy, right? You can argue that the Web of Life and Destiny synergizes the most with Peter Parker's Spider-Man than other Web Warriors because of his draw power, and this card is helping you draw even more. So I actually believe that it's a great balancing type of thing where Peter Parker does not have the Web War trait and that he needs the War of the Great Web in order to gain the Web War trait. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about that. I think that I've read online that most people think that he does need or that they wish that he came with the Web War trait, and I'm on board with VillainTheory here, who's saying that don't think about like what could have been. But I mean, I still think about what could have been. I just think it would be insanely bonkers. And let me know in the comments if you guys want me to play a game where I house rule that Peter Parker is a Web Warrior, and I'll play with a different deck, like a completely entirely like Web Warrior deck, and like I think that would just crush every scenario in the game. Like it would crush Ronin even easier, Venom Goblin even easier. Like everything would just be demolished if you can start right away playing like Ghost Spider and Spider-Man Hobie Brown and all these super strong Web Warriors, the superior Spider-Man, and he doesn't even have access to his own basic like Peter Parker basic ally Spider-Man too because of the unique thing. So even without that, I think he's so powerful. Yeah, I mean, I think that the Web of Life and Destiny and having him not have the Web War trait kind of balances him out. So yeah, okay, let's
Is you
go back to
don't kind of
Villain
think about what
Theory.
could have been, and
He's gonna
it's
show
a
us his
deck I
first
posted
deck
with,
here. Okay.
and that brings me on to my first deck. Welcome to the Web Warriors 2. Welcome to the Web Warriors was a deck I posted with.
Okay, let me actually just take a look at the deck really quickly. Okay, so 40 cards. It's a Justice deck. I love Justice with Peter Parker. You guys know that's my favorite type of way to play Peter Parker. I've seen his uh, I've seen his deck before, but I think this is like a second version of it, the Web Warriors 2. So I'm assuming that's very similar to the original version. He has 7 allies here. I think that's awesome. He has Ghost Spider. He has a lot of Web Warriors here. I think this is Hobie Brown, I'm guessing, because of the physical. And I'm guessing this is the Superior Spider-Man, so the 2-cost Spider-Man here. This could also be Spider-Man Miles Morales, but I'm assuming it's Hobie Brown because of the Web Warriors. And he has Professor X in here as well. I'm not the biggest fan of Professor X, but I can see how he can be useful with the Confuse for Peter. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I would definitely like, because Professor X is not really in that trait of the Web Warriors. So I would just go for like a Nick Fury or a Moon Girl. But I mean, that's just my personal opinion because you guys know I don't like playing with stats that much. But I can definitely see the value of getting that confused and then flipping down with Professor X. Here's Across the Spider-Verse. Let's see, clear the area. So one way or another, Stealth Strike. Okay, so Stealth Strike is an event that does 4 damage to the minion. So that's going to help a lot with what they were talking about earlier about him having problems with mid-sized minions. Once again, I would just use the swinging web kick here, and I believe that Stealth Strike is 3 costs. So the same cost for swinging web kick, but Stealth Strike, I think you can remove some threat if you defeat the minion. Swinging web kick is just the damage. And then let's see, he has resources. The Web of Life and Destiny Avengers Mansion is so good with Peter Parker. I love playing Avengers Mansion with Peter Parker. I think that's an awesome inclusion. Ingenuity. Yeah, I think that's a great inclusion as well. I prefer the Quinn Carrier. You guys, I don't know if you guys seen my deck building analysis of my Peter Parker deck, but I prefer the Quinn Carrier for specific reasons. But I think it's definitely arguable back and forth which one is better. In case you guys haven't seen that video, I just want to super duper quick. The reason I prefer Quinn Carrier is because I always spend every single turn, some portion of every single turn in hero form. Even though it's super nice to get that scientist to pay for ingenuity, there's just more versatility to play Quinn Carrier because I spend every single turn in hero form versus I don't spend every single turn in Arch Eagle, even though I would like to. Because either if you're in Arch Eagle, you're going to end up flipping to hero form at some point during that turn, and then you just spend the entire turn in hero form, or you end up flipping to Arch Eagle. So at least you still spend part of the turn in hero form. But yeah, I think that I think they're like neck and neck ingenuity. I don't think that Quinn Carrier is necessarily a better option. I think they're like tied. Plan B. Helping out with more mid-sized minions. Good Investigator is a good card, and then War of the Great Web. Yeah, I think this is an awesome deck, and it looks super fun too. I think it's yeah.
War of the Great Web before Spider-Man, and it was pretty popular, relatively. But this is a slightly revised version. It has a lower ceiling, so if everything lines up perfectly, the other deck will do a little bit better. But this one is a little bit more consistent. Your worst turn, your worst game is actually going to look, not half as bad. So it's got a lot more consistency to it. And the idea is we've got.
Okay, so I mean, I'm not sure what he's gonna talk about the consistency anymore. I personally, so if you guys have seen my video, I'm very big on being consistent with Peter Parker. And I do think that adding a lot of these trait log web war cards make him a little bit less consistent, right? So like, I know that this yellow Spider-Man right here with the energy resource is Pavitri, right? Indian Spider-Man. I think that he is super consistent because you don't need to be a web warrior to play it. And even though he also has 3 copies of the War of the Great Web here, which I think is great, if you draw a Ghost Spider or SPDR or Hobie Brown or the Superior Spider-Man, or Across the Spider-Verse, like turn 1, if you get any of these cards, they're dead cards. And Peter Parker already has dead cards with, what does he have? He has the, in his hero kit, I mean. So the Spire Tracers, right? 2 Spire Tracers, 2 Webbed Up, these are all dead cards, combined with a lot more Web War dead cards. I think that it's fine, I think that it's fun, but I wouldn't necessarily say that it's consistent. I'm not sure how this compares to his old deck. I think it's very similar, but he's saying this is a more consistent version, and I would argue that having those trait locked like what we're out makes it a little bit less consistent. So if you guys have seen my playthroughs, I'm trying to play as versatile, the most versatile that I can. So sometimes I play a whole game. I'm not even playing any web warriors, because I didn't get them like in the way that I wanted, like early game, and it just doesn't fit with the game plan. And sometimes I'm not playing any beat cops, right? And sometimes I'm not playing either, and it just kind of depends on the scenario, what kind of thing comes up. And I don't want Peter Parker to be like crutched on needing to get the web warrior engine out, because at the end of the day, it's not his trait, right? He's just an Avenger here. He doesn't have that web warrior trait, so I don't want to be fixated on that. And I think that that will add more consistency. I'm not sure what VillainTheory thinks about that, but that's just my opinion on having a lot of web warrior trait cards. But definitely having those cards make this deck super duper powerful late game, because the web warriors are the strongest thing. And I think that having these web warrior cards definitely makes it more fun, which I know is his intention, right? I'm not trying to say anything about the deck strength. I'm sure that's a powerful deck, definitely with the web warriors, especially late game. But in terms of consistency, I do think that adding a little bit more of the trait log web warriors for Peter Parker makes him a little bit lower tempo, just because you need to get the War of the Great Web, and you need to get the Web of Life Destiny to get the full value out of those web warriors.
Removal cards like Clear the Area. We've got Stealth Strike, a bit of damage for that mid-range minion clearance. And that's really just to kind of clear the way and...
Okay, this is like, sorry guys, I keep on stopping here. So so having these events to me are very similar to the inconsistency of what VillainTheory was talking about earlier, which I do agree with, right? A backflip. Like events are going to be a little bit less consistent than other cards, right? Because so when he's adding events like Clear the Area, which is a thwart, right? And then you have Stealth Strike. Let's go back to Clear the Area, right? Clear the Area, one cost event, remove 2 threat from a scheme. If it removes the last one in the scheme, draw 1 card. So it's even conditional as well. And then I don't know. I think that having events, he has 3 copies of it, which is good, right? So it'll make it more consistent. But if he's saying a point about Peter Parker being inconsistent because of the enhanced Spire Sense, where the situation might not always arise because you need to use it for a specific thing. I think that Clear the Area is also kind of in that realm, like adding a bunch of Clear the Areas if you really need it and you don't have it in your hand because it's an event, or the Self Strike, right? If there's no minion on the field for you to do that 4 damage, like I don't know. I do think that adding more events dilutes the deck a little bit and makes the inconsistency a little bit down. And you guys know I'm the biggest fan of Beat Cops, right? Because I think that Beat Cop is a very consistent card, right? You get it out, it's consistent, removing 1 threat every single turn. I usually build my Beat Cops up to 10 plus threat or something like that. So yeah, I don't, yeah, I mean, but I think it's a fine inclusion. I think having multiple copies definitely makes sure that you get it more often whenever you do need it. I'm just a little bit worried about getting it whenever you don't need it, I guess. But I think that's a fine inclusion.
A bit of damage for that mid-range minion clearance. And that's really just to kind of clear the way and keep the game running until the Web Warrior engine is fully online. We're running triple War of the Great Web. We've also got the Justice Spider-Man, which you can play without having another Web Warrior in play.
Okay, right. So he's playing his deck like a little bit different than mine, which I think is completely awesome. So it's about getting the Web Warrior engine running, right? It's just about living long enough for you to get the Web Warrior engine running. So I think that this makes a lot more sense. Like I think, yeah, Clear the Area and Stealth Strike, it's just to help keep you stay alive until you can get everything online. I think that's a fine way to play. It's just different than mine, but I think that that's awesome. Yeah, so it's just so the deck makes a lot more sense, and it's just trying to get this engine running.
Web of Life and Destiny. So we've got lots of different ways we can get Web Warriors online and able to play them, which is what we want. And once that's going, just card draw galore. It's very, very satisfying, very, very fun.
It's completely card draw galore. Like, yeah, with the Web Warriors and Peter Parker, like I was saying earlier, I think it's like the economy, the synergy is perfect there. And I'm going to read this. He says that I forgot to address player side schemes in the video. To cut a long story short, I don't think his early thwarting is good enough to reliably clear player side schemes, so I prefer to just lean fully into card draw and resources to get up in solo play. Yeah, I mean, this is like, he is like on point, like VillainTheory. So many things that he says is like completely on point. I totally agree with this. I cannot agree more. I think people have commented on my deck on Marvel CDB, like asking why I don't include player side schemes, and I pretty much say the same thing. I just don't think that he needs it. I think that it's a fine inclusion if you do want to, but the player side schemes are very low tempo for Peter Parker. So if you include them, they'll be super duper good for you if you're facing like an easy villain where you have that tempo and there's not a lot of pressure. I still think, I mean, if you want to include player side schemes, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's a fine inclusion, But I just think that if you're facing the tougher villains like Ronin or Venom Goblin, you don't have that leisure to clear player sizing, especially as Peter Parker. Yeah, so I mean, this is much more eloquently put than whatever I said in my comment. But I mean, I completely agree with it. This is like the best way to yeah, this is like, yeah, yeah. I mean, I totally agree with that. I think it can work, right? So don't get me wrong. I don't think that it's like a bad thing to put player size schemes with Peter Parker. They are super strong, but yeah, for this reason, I don't think that it's the best thing to put in a Spider-Man deck. So I'm glad that he actually put this right here.
And I just think it works really well. We're literally just taking Spider-Man at his base level, saying, hey, his 40's not good, let's put him in Justice. Hey, Web Warriors are really good, let's get some of those, they've got good damage as well. Stealth Strike, not the most popular card, but we're kind of looking at it being a little bit inefficient, but then Spider-Man having lots and lots of resources, it kind of balances out. Not the most efficient option, but it is a very safe and consistent option that he can afford anyway. So I like this deck.
I'm
It's
sorry,
not
guys. I'm a little bit, I'm going to play that back a little bit. I kind of don't understand a little bit.
Efficient, good. Let's get some of those. They've got good damage as well. Stealth Strike, not the most popular card, but we're kind of looking at it being a little bit inefficient, but then Spider-Man having lots and lots of resources, it kind of balances out. Not the most efficient. I just think it works really well. We're literally just taking Spider-Man at his base level, saying, hey, his 40's not good, let's put him in Justice. Hey, Web Warriors are really good, let's get some of those. They've got good damage as well. Stealth Strike, not the most popular card, but we're kind of looking at it being a little bit inefficient, but then Spider-Man having lots and lots of resources, it kind of balances out. Not the most efficient option, but it is a very safe and consistent option that he can afford anyway. So I like this deck. It's not going to win any points of creativity on this one, but it does work very well in my opinion, and is designed for solo play, although I think it does do quite well in 2-player as well. Then we have Voltron Quintet.
So I'm not exactly sure what he was talking about. So whenever I talked about this before, whenever I'm building a deck, I'm not necessarily choosing the aspect just because I'm like, oh, I need the removal or I want to do this. I'm usually choosing the aspect because I want to play a specific card. So and I talked about this before in my Peter Parker deck analysis video, but yeah, I mean, the reason that I picked Justice to play with Spider-Man is because I wanted Beat Cop. I felt that Beat Cop was the best way to help with that thwart removal. Just having the Beat Cops out on the field and removing 1/3 every single turn would just save Peter Parker. And yeah, and I think that it works so well with him because he has that super high economy. So having the high economy just lets him play such an expensive card like Beat Cop, 3 costs, low tempo, only removing 1 threat when you play it. But I mean, it works super well with Peter Parker. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that. I'm not sure the point that he was making, but I mean, I'm sure it was a good point. I think I'm like getting confused here because I keep clicking back and forth, so I think it's kind of mixed me up a little bit. So this is his leadership deck here. Okay, so he has 44 cards, which I think is fine. So I think is this okay, so I can, yeah, so this is a Voltron quintet. So Deadpool, yeah, Deadpool can never die if he uses force his force to interrupt. You have Iron Man, a great Voltron, Ronin, good Voltron, Yondu, good Voltron. So this is a Voltron Peter Parker deck, and it has the command teams. So it's about just keeping them, your allies alive. Okay, I'm just gonna hear what he says about this. And shouts to Journeyman again. I think that, I mean, leadership recursion is probably the best way to go with Peter Parker. But like VillainTheory was saying, I think that this is probably going to be more fun. Voltroning Iron Man is like one of the coolest things ever. So I do think that this is, I mean, he's definitely going for the fun deck here, which I totally respect a lot. So yeah, let's just hear what he
Can be
says.
played at any player count, this one. I'd say it's slightly better at 2 to 4, but it's still fine on 1 player, especially against some of the more forgiving, like slightly slower paced villains at the beginning, because this takes a couple of turns to really get going.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Like just a Voltron usually needs more time to get set up, especially for Peter Parker. I don't think that, I think that definitely having someone else cover your back in 2-player is going to help a lot more. So yeah, he totally understands it, of course.
But if you guys don't know what Voltron is, it's when you take basically an ally and you slap a bunch of upgrades onto it. It's effectively kind of like, a second hero kind of thing. Now, I think the term has been muddied and, loosened a bit over the years because it's become more popular to run a couple of Voltron targets or, maybe just run a few key upgrades. And it's kind of just upgrade leadership in a way. But here we are trying to build up some really big, juicy allies. And what makes this deck different to most of the decks I see out there is that we are bringing 5 Voltron targets, not just 1 or 2, not just maybe 3, not just running lots of core phase to try and get them. We have 5 different allies that are all really good to, Voltron up, to stack with upgrades. And that makes it really, really consistent. But this isn't talked about much of decks, but it also has a lot of replayability. Depending on which of these you draw first, you're going to set them up differently. You're going to have very different allies to use throughout the rest of the game because once they're down and set up, you're using those allies. Those are kind of what you're basing your game around. So it's just got that different, experience every time you play it. But still, by having 5 of them and 1 copy of Call for Aid, we have a very, very consistent way to get a Voltron target. Call for Aid, of course, finding an Avenger. We have 2 of them here that are.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, yeah, I would agree that, I mean, he has a lot of targets for Voltron, and with the call for aid too, I think it makes it, I mean, Voltron in itself is very inconsistent because you need to get those allies out, but I think that this deck does a great job of making Voltron as consistent as possible. So I think, yeah, I think that's an awesome thing, and I think that it makes this type of fun deck, like Voltron's always fun, it makes playing Voltron a lot more viable. So I think this is an awesome deck.
Really well suited to have upgrades on them. And you can kind of think of the Voltron targets as being split into 2 camps. And this is important because ideally this deck actually wants 2 Voltron allies in play. We're pretty greedy here. We're using Spider-Man's money and we're going for it. We're not worrying about resource generators. Our ramping is our allies. So we have Black Cat and Yondu being kind of the infinite attackers. They have a 1 attack stat, which is pretty rubbish, but they do not take consequential damage when they attack. This means they can attack and attack and attack, turn after turn, ready them up as much as you like, and they will be just fine. That's really, really good. On the other hand, we've then got Ronin and Iron Man, who are the kind of the bruisers coming in with more attack and forwarding. Their baseline stats are better, but they take consequential damage when they attack and so on. So they are characters that you have limited use of, and then you need to heal them up. So we kind of want to split our targets like this. We want 1 Voltron target who doesn't take attacking consequential damage, and then 1 who does. And we'll focus our healing on that 1 who does, and we'll just let the other one keep going with less stats, but no maintenance basically. So that's kind of the divide. We're looking for 1 of each. But then we've got that 5th one. We've got Deadpool, who is really in the middle. He's like the perfect hybrid to fill in either of these roles that you lack, because Deadpool takes consequential damage, but what he doesn't do is get defeated when he basically would be defeated by consequential damage. So if you use up his last hit point on an attack, he comes straight back to life. He heals up, and as a consequence of swords instead, you get a acceleration token. Now, you have to play carefully around acceleration token. If you just go for it straight away turn 1, you might be in for a very bad time. This is not a super fast-paced deck, but if you kind of heal him up or kind of use him cautious.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to talk about it, but I do think that the deck, like he was saying, it's not a super fast-paced deck. It does need that setup, and then I think that Spider-Man might have a little bit of trouble with thwarting, especially in the beginning, and even like late game. So late game, when Spider-Man's trying to get set up, he'll usually have big thwarts like later game because you have that setup, right? But I think that for these guys, I mean, Iron Man and Ronin and Deadpool can potentially thwart for a lot, and they can ready up with the Honorary Avenger and Sky Cycle. But I mean, I don't think that it's gonna offset like a situation if you really need to clear off all that threat. But once again, I mean, I know that he's not trying to play this for like the strongest deck. It's just a really, really fun deck that is also powerful. So yeah, I think that playing this in 2-player, just like he was saying, is going to be perfect for it.
For the first few turns, there comes a point where you can just start to just use him like crazy as if he was Black Cat or Yondu, which makes him a really interesting kind of point in the middle. You're like, okay, I'll focus my healing on Iron Man or Ronin if I've got them in play, and then Deadpool, I can just kind of let him go. And these characters, when fully upgraded with Inspired, Power Glove, Sidearm, they're going to be doing, 4 to 6 damage, which is really, really good. So they pack a punch, and with things like Commentating, Inspiring Presence, we're going to get a lot of attacks out of them. Sky Cycle as well. We want Honorary Avenger on basically anyone who's not already an Avenger, and even if they are, we can throw it on. And even though these are all kind of Voltron allies, Ronin, Deadpool, and Black Cat are perfectly playable and usable if you don't put a single upgrade on them. Ronin maybe hits a little bit less efficiency than you'd really like, but it's still honestly
So I
very
mean,
playable.
I have much less experience with leadership Peter Parker than with Justice. So I mean, I've tried it before. Yeah, and I've seen a lot of like cool stuff with Repurpose. So I think that it's definitely really, really good. I don't have that many more comments to say on it, I guess. So I'm going to put it a little bit faster just because I don't think I have anything of value to really add to this. I think that this is a great deck. So I think VillainTheory went awesome with this.
Once you've got your 2 Voltron things kind of going, you can still play another ally. You can help defend. Maybe if your multiplayer helps defend someone else, if you're fine as Peter Parker, so on and so forth. But it's still playable, still get good use out of them. And then you've got these monstrous allies readying lots and lots. And you're just Spider-Man doing Spider-Man things alongside it. Spider-Man has good card draw. You're going to get your first aid a little bit quicker back than usual, which is pretty nice. We could also potentially run here United We Stand, especially for expert mode. There are different options. You could go call for backup if someone will help you fort to help get a Voltron ally in play. But I quite like this balance. I like going all in on the upgrades and the Voltron allies and just letting it rip. And I think it's very, very fun. A word of caution, there is a small chance you don't get your Voltron ally for a couple of turns, and that slows down the deck immeasurably. So the risk in the first one is you've got to set up those Red Warriors. The risk in this one, you've got to set up your Voltron target. But with 5 targets and 1 copy of Call for Aid, which finds an Avenger, it is pretty consistent. It's quite rare. I feel like I get one turn 1 at least 80% of the time. Honestly, it feels like a bit more, and I definitely turn 2. It's very unlikely to go any further than that without seeing one. Oh, and before we move on, something I realized I should have mentioned, this is a 44 card deck. just do it. It's no one's going to come on the police and say, oh, you should be playing a 40 card deck. Spider-Man has a lot of those awkward cards. So while this deck is, slightly unreliable, and yeah, you've got to get the Voltron ally set up, we do have 6 targets. And by thinning out the deck, otherwise, we are making sure we're still getting one of those Voltron allies. That's why I've got so many of them. But we're not getting so many of the awkward cards kind of together so much.
Yeah, I just want to say I completely agree with Villain Theory. Like I prefer 40 card decks whenever I'm deck building, but don't let anyone tell you like, oh, you have a 44 card deck. Like that is not okay. That is completely fine. It's not going to make the biggest deal at the end of the day. And if you have a reason for doing it, I think do it, right? Like there's many decks where like back to like Journeyman again, he made like a super awesome Cyclops deck. It has so many allies because you want more allies than like Cyclops cards. So I mean, Villain Theory here, he has a specific reason for doing it. He wants to dilute the deck a little bit from getting like Peter Parker's dead cards. So like do it. Like I think that's awesome. And I think that's a good message. Like I don't think anyone should be I don't know, like shamed for, oh, you have a 42 card deck, like you gotta get it down. Yeah, I think it's completely okay to, and especially if you have a reason for it, that makes it all the more better. But yeah.
And it's going to space out the upgrades a little bit more, which is really, really nice, and let's take them. And once the upgrades are out, our deck is thinned out, and we still have a very kind of tight, smooth running deck. Once you're set up, you just carry the game. So very fun. I enjoy this one a lot. Even if leadership web is much stronger, or recursion or hill, things like that, then we've got flip.
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned that, right? It's not about strength, it's about having fun. I do think that Voltron is one of the funnest archetypes to play in Marvel Champions. So I'm totally in agreement with him. And he said something earlier too about how similar to the first deck that he said with the Justice deck, and it's getting the Web Wars online. This one is like getting the Voltron stuff online. So they're very similar in that way, where he just, I guess, having Peter Parker and his economy ramp up to get like one or the other online, like getting either the Web Wars online for Justice or getting the Voltron stuff online for leadership.
Quip. Now, I couldn't fit Quip into this deck. It is a very fun Web Warrior kind of card.
Okay, so he's doing a
it's not really good
protection deck here. And let me see, I can't see the name of it. Thwip and Quip. Okay, that's a really cool thing. So it's Taunt, has a lot of allies. Hard to ignore, unflappable, only one copy of the hard to ignore. I think that's good. So yeah, I like this. It doesn't look like it's a perfect defense deck, and I am not a fan of really big perfect defense stuff for Spider-Man Peter Parker. He does have unflappable and hard to ignore, so whenever it does trigger, it's going to be with backflip, right? Jocasta can get the backflip back, but he doesn't have like desperate defense, all that stuff, because I think that if you use Peter's economy to play those cards, you can't really do other things, and the villain might activate twice. So yeah, I'm you guys have probably heard me talk about this before, but I think that playing Peter Parker in protection, perfect defense is not the best way to go. So I do like what he has here. It has the versatility for some turns where Peter can easily perfect defense, right? If he has backflip in hand, or Jocasta getting him the backflip. But other than that, yeah, and it has Web Wars too, which looks really fun. I'm gonna hear what he has to say.
We don't want to stun the enemy here. We want the enemy to attack us, so we draw cards with our spider sensibility. But Whip is the kind of sound he makes, Spider-Man makes, when he shoots webs. So I'm keeping it in the name. And his quips are kind of his taunts. That's how we're getting a massive card draw here, which is what this deck is all about.
Okay, so I think he says like that's just the name of the deck. Yeah, it's not. He doesn't include the card. But yeah, I think it's fine. That's a fun name.
This deck could work in 2-player, but this deck is more of a kind of 1-player kind of themed deck. That's what I kind of aimed for when I built this originally, and I really like it. Taunt and Spider-Man is kind of a combo that's been talked about a lot recently. It's a new card, Taunt, that came with Angel. Very, very fun. You pay it for 1 cost, and then the villain attacks you, but after they attack you, you get to draw 3 cards. As your Spider-Man, you basically get a 4th card, which actually comes first before the attack concludes, but it's really, really good for Spider-Man with that extra card. Now, the problem I see with most of these decks is that they run a lot of defense cards. They're like, oh, I'm going to make the enemy attack me again, so I need to be able to deal with their attack, again. But the problem to me is if I'm drawing cards with Taunt, apart from that first one, because it comes before the actual attack, I don't want my 3 cards afterwards to be defense cards. If I'm stacking up defense cards to be attacked a lot, that's what I'm going to get. And that's why this card absolutely gets away with them. It adds the absolute minimal events really necessary. It just has a way to, cross the Spider-Verse to get those Web Warriors in play, because this is a Web Warrior deck again. But generally,
yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of a different reason for me, but I totally agree. Like, I don't like having that many events. I mean, I understand with the taunt, he doesn't want to get for that reason. I don't like it at all, like having events. So I think that this is a great thing to not include those like massive defense events. I think that's awesome, and I'm totally on board with him not including that. Although we have different reasons for it, I mean, at the end of the day, it's the same conclusion.
Everything you draw from Taunt is going to be playable and usable that turn. Even if it's Energy Barrier you're setting up for next turn, this deck uses Energy Barrier and Armored Vest to trigger unflappable and things. It doesn't care about defense events outside of backflip, and it does use Jocasta to try and get a 3rd copy of that throughout the game. So I think it's very good. The basic strategy is get your War of the Great Web down / Web of Life and Destiny / both of them, so you can play your Web Warrior allies. And we have limited ourselves to 4 Web Warrior allies and Silk, even though we could have more. And I kind of put Silk separately because you can actually play her without a Web Warrior out. So she's kind of an extra way to get a Web Warrior card in play to let you.
Yeah, I really like Silk because you can play her without a Web Warrior ally, and she's only 2 cost. And I understand why he didn't include Spire UK in here, because I mean, he's playing taunt and he wants Spider-Man to, so Spider UK may die pretty quickly, and I'm guessing that he doesn't want Spider UK to be the one defending that much. Because yeah, I'm guessing, yeah, because yeah, but I understand why he didn't include Spider UK there. That makes sense.
Play your other web warrior allies. We've then got Daredevil, and I sort of mentioned Jocasta as well, who kind of are just options to play alongside Black Cat when you haven't got your web warrior stuff set up, but they're still good anyway because Jocasta getting backflip, super strong. Daredevil, he's just 2-forwarding, and you can even fort twice with him for kind of a slow version of Fistas, same cost as.
Yeah, and so I love this as well. Like having high thwart allies with Peter Parker, I think works so well. I love how he has 8 allies. I love including tons of allies with Peter Parker. They work really, really well because allies can do the thwarting for Peter Parker. So he's including these high thwart allies for Peter to help him just thwart, especially in protection. So I think that's an awesome inclusion.
Justice, same threat removal in the end, slower, but you can divide it. Long story short, Daredevil helps Spider-Man with his threat problem until the kind of web warrior machine is rolling, and then you're good to go. The taunt strategy is like this. You basically want 1 or 2 allies out going into the villain phase, and when the villain attacks you, if you have taunt in hand, you block with a ally instead. This is so on your turn, when you use taunt, you're not exhausted, and you can exhaust with Spider-Man to defend the taunt attack, because allies cannot block attacks from taunt. When you taunt the villain, they come directly for your hero, no matter what. So you kind of want to block the villain's attack in the villain phase, so you can be the one to
block it with an ally in the villain phase, so you can defend and Spider. Yeah, I think I've talked with shoutouts to 16 Night Seeker on Reddit. Yeah, I talked to him. He has a very similar deck too, just using taunt, but then having allies block during the villain phase, and then having Spider-Man take it in the hero phase. I think that's a super cool strategy. Yeah, so I think he's on point with this.
To block it in the hero phase because no one else is going to do it for you, and we don't have like defense.
And I noticed I don't think there's going to be an aggression deck, right? Yeah, so he's just I think.
Let's array up things here. We don't care about that. And this works out really well. When the villain first attacks us, we will get that card drawn from Spider Sense, then an ally blocks, whatever. Then we taunt again, we get another card from the Spider Sense. Then any of these cards could be backflip as well, which is going to be really nice for us too. So it just works out really smoothly. Whatever you draw, you're probably going to be able to play it, unless you happen to get Spider Tracer and there's no minions out. But Peter Parker isn't getting away from that anytime soon. So yeah, it's kind of perfect defense meets taunt meets web warriors, kind of a perfect hybrid. And I just find for Taunt Spider-Man, this is the version I've found the best. Now, if you're in like 3 or 4 player, especially, and you need to defend for lots and lots of people, obviously this isn't going to do it. This is, again, designed for solo. I still think it does well in 2-player, and it's very, very fun. And that about does it. If you guys have any favorite decks of Spider-Man, let me know in the comments. If you guys try any of the decks in this video, definitely please let me know. I'd be really, really interested in that. That sounds really cool. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe. There'll be lots more like this coming up, and hope you guys have a great day.
Okay, yeah, I mean, so I don't really have too much to say. Yeah, I think Spider-Man actually works very well in different aspects. I know a lot of people say that, like as a response to my stuff, where I'm playing Justice a lot, like all Justice with him, people are saying that he's only viable in solo and Justice. I think that he's viable in all 3. I think with Villain Theory's decks here, like he's showing how Peter Parker is viable in protection and he's viable in leadership as well. I do want to eventually make videos with other decks, but I want something more, like I want to make more unique decks that aren't already made for leadership and aggression and protection, but I do want to show Peter's strengths in other aspects, because I do think that he is powerful in other aspects as well, and in aggression. And yeah, I mean, I've like with Hone Technique, Spider-Man gets so many mental resources there, like just synergizing with Moon Girl. I think that that's a very viable option as well, and with Boot Camp and stuff like that as well. So yeah, I mean, I think that Spider-Man is a very versatile hero. I don't really have much other thoughts. I think I agree with a lot of what Villain Theory says. I think that yeah, this was a super awesome video. I think I went super duper long, but yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please definitely check out Villain Theory's original video so you can get the full context. I know I didn't skip anything, but I think there's parts that maybe I put it too fast where I kind of like didn't really understand what he was saying. So yeah, definitely check out his video. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed like me giving my insight on Spider-Man. He's my favorite hero, so I did want to comment a little bit, but yeah, thank you to Villain Theory for posting a Spider-Man video. I think that's super duper cool. I feel like he's not talked about as often anymore. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.